So today's guest presenter is Kate vanderVoort from Social Mediology. Kate founded Social Mediology in 2009 to fulfill her passion of connecting people, organizations, and ideas. Social Mediology is a boutique agency specializing in social media strategy, implementation, coaching, and training. As an early adopter, Kate used social media as a tool for building brands, increasing sales, creating social change, and building online communities. She's worked on social media strategies and training for some of Australia's largest corporates and not-for-profits, and still has a passion and commitment to helping the smaller fish swim in the big pond of social media. Before founding Social Mediology, Kate had 15 years' experience in the not-for-profit sector, including marketing, online strategy, fundraising, and business development. Previous roles included CEO of Discovery Australia, General Manager of the Quest for Life Foundation, and the Chairman of the Good Company Board. Kate has a degree in social work, a Cert 4 in workplace training, and has recently completed the AICD Company Directors course. Kate worked on the CB Online social media resource, which can be found at cbonline.org.au, and we are very lucky to have her presenting for us today.
Thank you, Stephen, and good evening, everyone, and welcome. It's lovely to be here with you. Nicola, can I just test that you can hear me loud and clear now that I've unmuted?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
And I'm just going to remind you to press record.
I've already.
Fabulous. So welcome, everybody. The purpose of this evening is I've been having some great conversations with Nicola and Stephen around the needs of community radio and how you use social media. So we're going to look this evening at what is social media, a bit of the psychology that's required to really make social media work for your radio station or your organisation. We're going to look at content and the who, what, where and when of content, and then some next steps and resources. So we'll jump right on in. It's a real jam-packed webinar this evening, but we will pause for questions along the way. So generally when I'm in a room full of people, I ask the question, who feels overwhelmed by social media? And as a general rule, there are very few people that don't put their hands up. Between the constant changes to social media platforms, the demand for current, fresh, interesting content, and then having on top of that to respond and converse with your social media communities, it's no wonder that small to medium-sized organisations struggle to stay across social media. It's just ever-changing. The good news is that if you get really clear on what it is that you want to achieve from social media, and if you approach that in a strategic way, you can break it down and make it manageable. And some of the things that we're going to talk about in this webinar and the next are how you can do that in a really effective and efficient way for your organisation. For those of you who are right at the beginning of this journey and are looking for the how-to of setting up profiles and managing social media, there's a resource on the CB Online website, which we help to compile, and that's got a whole lot of the how-to information. So I certainly suggest that you have a look at that if you're in the early stages, or if you're in a position where you really want to refresh and evaluate what it is that you're doing and make sure that it's all set up correctly and optimised in the best way for your station. We're also going to be running another webinar in July, which is around Facebook, and the statistics clearly showed in the poll at the beginning that Facebook is the predominant social media that's used by most of you. So I have identified that there's a real need to delve into that in quite a bit of detail. So we'll certainly talk about Facebook in particular in the next webinar. So I want to start out by saying that social media is not a silver bullet. A lot of people think that they can just flick a switch and suddenly people will flock to their social media platforms and they'll want to engage and converse and give you feedback and talk to you and participate online. And that's rarely the case. The reality is social media is just a tool, and it's something that needs to be integrated into all aspects of your organisation in order to be effective. How you use the tool is whether you will be successful or not. And all of the things that we're going to cover tonight are all around the mindsets and the principles that really make social media work. And if you don't get those right at the beginning, you can waste a lot of time doing the same thing over and over and not getting a great result. And I'm sure that we've got a varying audience tonight in terms of the communities that you already have online and the numbers of people that are participating in that. But wherever you are in your social media journey, these principles and these mindsets are essential to make it work effectively. So I want to start out just by looking at a definition of social media. I like this one by Brian Solis. Social media is any tool or service that uses the internet to facilitate conversations and connections between friends, peers, influencers and collaborators to share knowledge, experiences, opinions, news and insights. It can involve the use of words, pictures, video, chatter or audio. I also add into this definition that it's something that happens on a public stage. So email could be counted in that definition. However, for the purposes of this evening, social media is anything that's happening on a public stage and has a reach beyond just the people who are participating in the conversation. So I want to very briefly just go through the key social media platforms. Most of these you'll be very familiar with. Some of them are a little newer, and it was good to see that all of the platforms in the polls are being used at some degree. So Facebook, as you would know, has got timeline for business pages. The timeline's quite similar to the personal timeline, although there's functionality on a business page that you don't have as a personal profile. I won't go into it in detail now, but for anyone who has accidentally set up their radio station as a personal profile, I highly recommend that you make the switch to the business page. It's very restrictive if you're only a personal profile, and as a general rule, people don't want to be giving their personal details or giving access to their personal Facebook page to the brands that they interact with. Facebook has over 1 billion active users, and in Australia there's more than 11 million active users on Facebook, with 6.6 million checking in daily. So Facebook is definitely the most used platform in Australia, and the statistics show that those of you using Facebook have already identified that that's a really great place to start with social media. But Facebook has about 69% of our internet population. Twitter is a slightly different platform. So this is a micro-blogging platform. You know that it's 140 characters or less. There's 140 plus million active users on Twitter, but in Australia there's only about 1.8 million users. So there's a lot less people using Twitter in Australia than there is on Facebook. Having said that, particularly in the media space, Twitter is really active. So you may find that although those statistics on average look lower, that some of your own audiences and target demographics are actually quite active on Twitter. And Twitter can be a great avenue for finding newsworthy stories, providing you check the credibility of those stories. The next one that I want to talk about is a blog, and I think that for anyone that's questioning which platforms they should be on, if resources are stretched, my recommendation is always Facebook first, Twitter second, and a blog is an integral part of a social media strategy. A blog sits on your website and gives you the ability to write longer content. So definitely more than 140 characters, and definitely more than the few sentences that's recommended on Facebook. But this has a significant impact on your SEO, or search engine optimization. So if your website is an important part of your marketing strategy or your fundraising strategy, you definitely want to be working on your SEO, and a blog gives you the ability to have the most current and up-to-date content. Google Plus is a relatively new player in the social media space. It's certainly starting to increase in terms of usage. Like Facebook, you've got the ability to have a personal and a business profile, and they've now launched communities where you can create a community of interest. So that may actually be of some use to some of the larger stations in particular. There are about 340,000 active users in Australia. But at the moment, it tends to be a favourite hangout among tech industries and more the engineer, online, digital sort of space. So you may not find a lot of your target demographic there, although running things like Google Hangouts with video can be a great way to bring your target audience onto Google+. Pinterest is a very visual-based social media platform, particularly popular for renovations, house designs, and weddings. Anything that has a real visual element to it does really well on Pinterest. And we will, in the future session, talk about some of the strategies of how you might integrate that into the rest of your social media strategy. LinkedIn also has personal and professional or company profiles. And the reason I mention it here is that there is a real benefit for setting up a company profile for your radio station and using the recommendations process, particularly if you're engaged in sponsorship or donors from the corporate sector. So you might want to look at LinkedIn company profiles. So that's the overview of the main platforms. But what I want to move into now is really the mindset or the psychology that's required to make this work. And it requires a bit of a paradigm shift. So marketing in social media is completely different to traditional marketing. Gone are the days where we just broadcast a message, and the louder and broader we broadcast a message, the more it might get heard. And I think for radio stations in particular, this is an interesting one because you are so used to broadcasting a message. But social media really turns that on its head. And social media is all about engagement and conversation and genuinely building community. So there's some of the things that we're going to look at. But it gives you the opportunity to build relationships. And it's through those relationships that you increase your listener base, that you reach more people like your ideal listeners, that you meet new donors, and that you find new volunteers. But it's through relationship, not through broadcasting a message. The other point I'd like to make at this point is that social media is really different for large brands than it is for small. So Coca-Cola, for example, by its very nature, will have hundreds and thousands, if not millions of people engaging with them through social media on a regular basis, purely because of the size of their brand and the billions of dollars that they spend on advertising. Now, for most smaller organisations and even medium-sized organisations, we just don't have the same advertising budgets, and we tend to not have the same brand recognition. So unless you've got thousands or hundreds of thousands of people engaging on social media because of the impact of your brand, social media is very much a building one person at a time, one connection, one follower, one fan. And these communities require active participation and active content to increase in size and increase in engagement, and ultimately to meet your objectives that you want to achieve from social media. So it's really important when you start out to ask the question, do you want to be middle of the road? The reality is there are hundreds and thousands of business pages, whether they're not-for-profits, whether they're community, whether they're brands, whether they're businesses, whether they're celebrities. There are hundreds and thousands of business pages on Facebook. There are hundreds and thousands of accounts on Twitter. And as a smaller organisation, you really need to ask the question, how are you going to stand out from the crowd? How are you going to be heard above all of the noise that's there? And there's a couple of things to look at here. So you want to look at your tone and persona. You know, we'll talk a little bit more tonight about how you present yourself in social media, because a lot of brands are still approaching this with a very dry corporate tone. They've got a very fixed or rigid persona because that fits with their brand. But to make social media work, you really need to put a human personality behind your social media efforts. And this can be quite challenging, particularly if you've got multiple people managing your social media. But it's well worth articulating in writing and in any training that you do with people involved in social media. It's well worth, workshopping and then documenting what is the tone and the persona that you're comfortable with. And that's where risk tolerance comes in. Sometimes the social media team or the person doing the social media has very different ideas to people more senior in an organisation about what that tone or persona should be. And this can cause quite a bit of friction in an organisation, particularly if management or people leading the organisation are more conservative or don't understand some of these technologies. The risk tolerance can be quite low. And it's always important to keep testing what that risk tolerance is. And without doing the wrong thing, without overstepping boundaries, I think it's always important to test that boundary and sometimes push that boundary. But you want to do that in a way that's supportive of the organisation, not exposing the organisation. And then it comes down to creativity. You absolutely need to be creative on social media. And if you play it too safe or too conservative, your message won't get heard. So we'll talk a bit more about some of those principles. Now this one's really important. You can't completely control your message on social media. In fact, I would venture to say that you can't really control your message at all. What you can control is what you say, when you say it, and which platform you say it on. But once you have said whatever it is that you're going to say on social media, that message can be changed, can be shared, can be liked, can be disliked, can be commented on, can be talked about. And that can be scary for particularly more conservative organisations. But if you're willing to give up some of the control, the benefit that you get from that is greater reach. And that really is the core benefit of social media. If you create engaged relationships with your best listeners, your best members, your best donors, they will lead you to more people like them. And the more you try and control the conversation or control what people say, where they say it, how they say it, the more you try and control that, the less reach you will have. So again, it comes back to this risk tolerance of really understanding in your organisation how far you're willing to go, how creative are you willing to be, what content is acceptable and what content's not acceptable. But I really encourage those working on a strategy with social media to really question how much are we trying to control rather than being an active participant in these communities. And the brands or businesses or organisations that do the best on social media are the ones that genuinely want to create a community that adds value to their target audience. So whether that's your listeners, your members, your donors, but you genuinely want to create a community that participates and is engaged, and you are a member of that community rather than the controller of that community. We all have heard of the KISS principle, keep it simple. This is really important in social media. There can be a real desire or kind of this feeling like you must be on every social media platform. You must be where everybody is. And my recommendation would be that you really assess what resources you have to do social media in a way that really benefits your organisation but doesn't leave you open to exposure. There's nothing worse than having a whole lot of social media platforms where nothing's happening. And you see this all the time, that people will do a search or you click on a button on a website and you go to a social media platform and nothing's happened for months. And that speaks volumes about a brand. So you're much better off having 1, 2, 3 social media platforms, whatever it is that you're able to manage with the resources that you have at your disposal. But you're much better off having a couple of key social media platforms that you update regularly, that you respond to the conversations and engage with the people who are actually on those platforms, that you create valuable content that's worth sharing, and do those communities really well rather than spreading yourself too thin. I know in this space in particular, and it's the same across any organisation that has multiple brands. So if you look at, you have your station brand, you then have each of your programs have got their own brand or their own persona or personality with the host of those shows. And I understand that there can be a real temptation to create profiles for all of your shows as well as your station. Now, the exception to what I'm saying is that if you have a social media savvy, engaged, interesting personality running one of your shows and they have a following and a niche target demographic, it absolutely makes sense for them to have their own social media profiles. But what you want to do is integrate them as much as possible with the station profile so that both benefit. And a lot of media or particularly smaller media organisations where they've imposed social media on all of the hosts of particular shows, you can end up with a real variety of results. So you can end up with some pages where nothing happens and other pages where there's a really lively conversation and a lot of activity. So it's going to be different for each and every one of you. There is no one size fits all in social media, but really look at how you can consolidate, because you're much better off having one page that has 1,000 fans on Facebook, for example, than having 7, 8, 10 pages that might only have 50 or 60 people on each of those pages. And what you might find too is that those that are interested in one particular area get exposed to a whole lot of other interesting information through your station that they wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. So keep it simple. But as I said, you don't need to be on every social media platform. And for example, I would say that, you know, until Google Plus picks up more, or until you have a set strategy on how to use Pinterest, then I'd probably suggest that you don't engage in those just yet. So it's not all about numbers, it's about quality relationships and engagement. Now, this is a bit of a double-edged sword because we are human beings and we do like to be where other human beings are. So if you go to a Facebook page and there's 4 people on it and nobody's engaging or talking, you're much less likely to click like, to have a conversation, to participate. Whereas if you go to a page where there's a real thriving community that's already engaged, and often people do look at numbers, you're much more likely to get that person's buy-in. There's a couple of things here, though, that can be misleading. There are some brands that have really negative sentiment. I had an experience recently with one of the daily deal sites, and I went to their Facebook page because I couldn't get service through their customer service. And although it looked like there were more than 60,000 people on their Facebook page, when I actually dug a little bit deeper, they had shut down comments on their page, so no one could actually comment except against their posts. And each post had about 500 or 600 comments, and it looked like this was a real thriving, engaged community. But if you actually clicked and looked at all of those comments, they were all negative comments. They were all people who hadn't had their products delivered, who hadn't received the service that they were after. So whilst it looks impressive that there were 60,000 people on this Facebook page, I would venture to guess that it's doing the brand far more damage than having a smaller community where there's less angst. So having said that, the other important thing around this is, particularly on Facebook, and now Twitter have actually implemented a similar system that ranks content. So you don't get to see every piece of content that's posted on Twitter and on your Facebook timeline, your Facebook news feed. And these algorithms feed you what they think you're interested in. So if your page on Facebook has a large number of people but no one's engaging in your content, no one's actually seeing your content. So you absolutely need to keep the focus on quality relationships and engagement rather than numbers. And as I said already, they will lead you to more people like them. So your current listeners will lead you to more ideal listeners. Your current donors and members will lead you to more people like them who are your next best customer. I'm going to go through just this last one and then we're going to pause for a moment for, I've seen a flurry of activity in the chat. Whilst not reading them all, I am going to pause after this slide just to see if there are any questions before we move on. So social media conversations are happening on a public stage for the world to see. Basically, if you're not happy for whatever you're going to say to be on a billboard in the middle of King's Cross in Sydney or the front page of your of the Australian newspaper, don't say it on social media. There is a place for being controversial. There is a place for talking about things that spark debate. But you don't want to overstep the line. And we've seen plenty of examples recently in commercial radio. I don't need to remind anyone of these examples where people have overstepped the line. And sometimes it's on radio and that then overflows onto social media. But sometimes it can also be content that's originated from a brand on social media. So when somebody's unhappy with you or has a bone to pick with you about something that you've said on radio, it used to be that they'd pick up the phone and they'd ring the station and talk to the producer or someone at the station. But now when people take to social media, it's happening on a public stage. So how you deal with that on social media really reflects on your brand and your willingness to listen to feedback and to respond to that in a way that's that's supportive of your organisation but also meets the issue that the person is raising. And we'll talk a little bit more about negative feedback in a moment. So Nicola, I'm going to pause for a moment and have a sip of water. Did you have some questions to feed through?
Yeah, I do, actually, Kate. I'm going to start at the top and do them in order because I don't want to leave anyone out. But if I do leave you out, you can send me a message. The first question, I think, came from Murray, and he was talking about it being, he actually said it was a silly question, but it's not. I think I know what he's getting at, and he can... I'll actually unmute him if we need him to explain it a little more. Sorry, I'm just flicking through the questions now and trying to get back to it because I was just checking I didn't miss anyone. What Murray was asking about was, God, there's so many questions. I can't believe how many people have put questions up already. First silly question regarding Faceplant, he calls it, Facebook. He has a business page without a personal profile. So I'm presuming that what Murray's talking about is he has a Facebook page as opposed to a Facebook personal profile, and it seems to restrict the functionality of the page. Have I got that right, Murray? I can actually just unmute you if you want to ask that question directly yourself. You're unmuted now. Murray?
Yeah, okay, yeah, no, that's it basically. I find I can't search. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can anyone hear me? Yep,
we can all
okay.
hear you.
Yeah, no, that's all right. It's coming from a fair way away, I guess. Yeah, basically I've got a Facebook page and I can't search, I can't link into other things. It seems to be quite restricted. I would have thought it was the other way around.
So the way it generally works, Murray, is that a personal profile needs to be an administrator of a business page. In some instances, and Facebook turned this functionality on and off, there was a time where you could create a business page without a personal profile. I haven't seen the ability to do that for quite some time. So my suggestion to you would be that you do create a personal profile. You can hide it so that you don't have to become friends with anyone. You don't have to use it from a personal perspective. You don't have to share your family photos. And when you're an administrator on Facebook using your personal profile, no one on that business page has access to your personal profile. So they're disconnected from a public perspective, but from a technical behind-the-scenes perspective, they are connected. And really all I can suggest is that you set up that personal profile, make it an administrator of the page, and that should open up all functionality. But I haven't heard of restricted functionality on business pages, and that's the only thing I can think of that might be stopping that working for you.
And Kate, we might want to mention here that the next webinar is actually going to be looking in detail, much more detail at these kinds of issues around Facebook. So tonight is more a general social media one, and we figured that there would be a lot of these questions around Facebook. So we're actually going to spend the whole of the next webinar talking about those details. But going on, another question about Facebook from Alison Bray. What are the benefits of using a news page feed on your website versus a blog spot? The website can link to Facebook and Twitter. Will more people find you through browsing a blog spot? Did that make sense to you?
It does. It's also a fairly technical question, and I know Alison, so I'm happy to have that conversation with her offline. But the benefit of having a blog has got SEO benefits, whereas social media feeds from Facebook and Twitter, for example, on your website don't increase search engine optimization. So they play.
Can you explain that for people who like me who don't know what you're talking about when you say SEO?
SEO is a whole another beast, but basically SEO is what dictates how highly you rank on Google. So Google and other search engines scour the web for keywords and check the relevance of your website. And when you put in a search to Google, there's all sorts of things in the Google algorithm that dictate whether your page or your competitor's page show up. And what's really important on your website is that you've got content that's rich in keywords that people who are looking for your service or your product are searching for. And it has to be consistent. So it's SEO is kind of a whole nother beast, and it does integrate with social media, but it's not technically part of social media. So a blog, however, gives you a great opportunity to create longer content that you can share across your social media sites. And ideally what you want to be doing is putting out content that leads people to your website, because when they come to your website, they can then see the program, they can then see donation, ways to donate, they can see other information about your radio station or your organisation. So the lumping all of those things into one thing is trying to simplify something that's a bit more complex.
Yeah. Okay. Emily Pursehouse has got a question that I know a lot of stations are asking at the moment. My station has a personal profile, and which has over 600 friends. So I'm presuming that that's an open group, but I might be wrong. I've created a business page for it, and I'm trying to get people from the personal profile or the open group over to the business page, but so far only 100 have come over and have liked the page. Any suggestions on how to get the other 500 over?
Sure. And can I suggest, Nicola, that maybe this is the last in-depth question about Facebook?
Yeah. Because we can put them on next week.
Other content, and we'll do that definitely in more detail in the next webinar. Look, it's a really tricky one. It's very difficult to get people to switch from being a friend to a fan on Facebook. You can personal message each of them. You can, what we suggest when we work with clients who are in this situation is that you kind of have a phase out process. So it might be over a period of, depending on how active people are on Facebook, but a period of 3 to 6 weeks. And that you start by saying in 6 weeks we will be closing down this page and moving to the business page so that we can have a more engaged community where there's a lot more participation, because those people have all got a one-on-one relationship with the station rather than a community, rather than being part of a larger community. And then you just regularly post, so probably every second day, saying, if you haven't already liked the page, please go over. If you want to be really diligent about it, I would suggest that you keep an eye on who's liking your business page and go and unfriend them from the personal profile. That way the numbers on that do start to diminish and people won't be seeing the same message over and over if they've already made the switch. But there's no easy answer for that one at all. There was a time when you could switch a personal profile to a business page, but if you've already created a business page, then that gets a bit more complex as well.
We may actually be able to bring you some examples of stations that have done that in the next session as well, and have done it successfully. Joy Taylor asks, how much is too much? Is there a rule of thumb about posting on Facebook and I'm presuming other social media?
We're going to cover that shortly.
Okay. Andrew from 2MBS, Andrew Zizik, has asked, are there any examples of how successful radio Facebook pages have worked? I know we are going to cover that next time. Have you got that later as well?
No, there are no case studies in this evening because we really want to keep this at the higher level around how do you make social media work, but we'll certainly include case studies
next month.
Webinar, and there's also some case studies on the online resource on the CB online website.
Absolutely, yeah. I should point to that Kate and Stephen have actually been working on also the next thing, Andrew, that you talk about, are there good templates of the training guidelines for presenters using social media? That's some of the materials that are already on CB Online, so we can send you links to that later. And then
we've only got 15 minutes left, so I'm wondering if we might push on.
I think you should.
And I'm also happy if people want to either post questions afterwards, or if you want to send me a digest of all the questions, I can write a blog that answers some of the questions that haven't been answered. But I'm keen for everybody to get value out of this evening, and sometimes we can get a bit stuck on individual ones but I'm very happy to answer those after the webinar.
Yeah, I'll just mention, Trish, you've asked a number of questions around sponsorship that I'll make sure gets brought up at the end. Great. If you want to keep going, Kate.
All right, so I'm going to move into a little bit the kind of content and how we get engagement on social media. Now, it's really important to focus on creating an emotive response. You know, people are really lazy. I have a blog that I regularly write, which a little less regularly lately, but that I have regularly written about how to use social media for business. And I run into people all the time when I'm speaking at conferences, when I'm doing training sessions. People say, I love your blog, I read it, it's so helpful, so easy to read. But do you think I can ever get them to comment or like or share or actually engage in the content? So people are really lazy when it comes to engaging with brand content on social media. And the things that do get high engagement are things that create an emotive response. And it's really important to find a balance between your key marketing messages, so promoting your station, promoting the shows, asking for donations, seeking volunteers. They're all your key marketing messages. You want to surround those with value-added content and things that create an emotive response, because those are the things that people will share. They're very unlikely to share your key marketing messages. When we do Facebook next time, I'll go into more detail about how EdgeRank works. But if you're not getting likes, comments and shares on your content on a regular basis and at a particular percentage around the rest of the fans that you have, people are not seeing your content. So what you're doing is wasted if you're not getting engagement. So definitely look at how you can create an emotive response through your social media platforms. And as news organisations, you know, you have a lot of emotive content that you can share. Again, you want to be clear that it's in line with the tone and the persona that you want to go for with your brand. But really look for the things that are going to get that like, that share, that comment, the retweet. You want to show, don't shout. Now, I've added this one in particularly around things like asking for donations or asking for public support. Rather than just asking or shouting about how great you are and what you do, demonstrate what you do. So you might talk about, you might write a blog on a great corporate partnership that you have and the benefit that that's given your radio station. You might, rather than asking directly for volunteers, do a profile on one of your volunteers so that you can show people the kind of people that want to come and volunteer at your radio station. The way we use this with some of our clients, we have a venue hire place. So rather than saying, come and hire our venue for $200 a night, they might say, welcome to XYZ organisation who've just arrived to run a workshop on ABC. the chef's in the kitchen cooking your dinner and the beds are turned down, the fire's on, it's toasty warm. What you're saying is you're a venue hire that has catering, that has comfy beds, that has a fire and is nice and warm. So you're demonstrating what it is that you do rather than shouting about it. And this is where a lot of brands or organisations fall down on social media, is they're so busy talking about themselves rather than showing people. And it does take more work. You know, none of this is a quick fix. It definitely takes more work, but the impact and the results will be much higher. What others say about you in social media is far more important than what you say about yourself. There's a great video by Eric Qualman from the book Socialnomics. He updates that every year with all the amazing statistics on social media. And in there they talk about 14% of people trust advertising. And I think it's something like 76% of people trust peer-to-peer recommendations. So if you genuinely create a community where there's buzz, where people are talking about you, where they're engaged in your conversation, where they're interested in the content that you're sharing, where they're saying, I tune in every day and I love listening to you, that is far greater endorsement than any marketing message you will ever put out about yourself. Because people trust people. People are very suspicious of brands. Whether you're a community organisation or not, they still see you as a brand or a fairly faceless entity. Now, one thing that you've particularly got going for you as community radio stations is that you have the personalities of the people on radio. And so people will attribute a certain amount of credibility and trust to those people because of the relationship that they feel they have by listening on air. But the more you can get other people raving about you rather than you raving about yourself, the more successful social media will be. You want to step outside of yourself as the organisation or radio station and really ask, what do your listeners, donors and members want from you? And it's not always what we think. Yes, they'll be interested in your program scheduling. Yes, they'll be interested in the weather. Yes, they'll be interested in the news. But what else are they interested in? And sometimes just asking that question can give you a wealth of information. So to actually crowdsource some of your content, and we'll talk a bit more about that in the next webinar as a strategy of user-generated content and crowdsourcing some of your content. And some radio stations, I know some of the community radio stations already do this really well. But you want to get yourself out of the middle of the conversation. So stop making it all about you and make it about your community. Make it about the listeners, donors, and members. You don't have to develop or create all of your own content. You can aggregate. Now, this is one of the things that stops most brands doing well in social media is they don't know how to find good content, don't know where to get it from, only post marketing messages because that's what they know. But you have the ability to be known as the go-to place and share the best information from around the world or around your local community, in your cases, in your specialty. So if you're a community radio station in a particular geographical location, be the expert in that location. Share content that comes from a wide variety of other organisations in the area. Be the place that people go to because they know that you give them exactly what they want on a daily basis. We've done some work with a news agency in Manly, and one of their strategies is to put out the surf report every morning. Now, it has nothing to do with selling newspapers, but it has everything to do with their target demographic, which is a lot of people in Manly like to surf. So find the things that really matter to your audience and share that content, but you don't have to develop it all. One of the things in my industry is that people overnight in America write fantastic blogs and press releases and news and information about social media, so that when I wake up here in Australia in the morning, I've got a wealth of content to share and to talk about and comment on and engage with, that my communities that follow me really appreciate the fact that I aggregate the content that's out there for them. So figure out ways that you can do that in your own organisation. And particularly if you're resource stretched, look at how you can aggregate across the organisation. So not having silos where everybody operates their own little patch, but where you're all contributing and collaborating around the kind of content that you want to share. So in terms of a content plan or conversation calendar, I really suggest that you do some planning around this. The reactive versus proactive, for the larger radio stations, you might find that most of your time on social media is actually responding. You're being reactive because you've got a large listener base and they're commenting and asking questions and participating, and that you're quite focused on responding rather than having a proactive content strategy. So if you're lucky enough to be in that situation, the next stage for your community is to get really proactive in the kind of content that you want to seed into your community. For those of you that don't naturally have hundreds and thousands of people engaging with your content, you need a really proactive content plan that's going to drive engagement, that's going to build a following. So you want that to be integrated content. I just spoke about that. You want it to be shareable. If you say, tune into our radio program tonight to hear about XYZ, people are unlikely to share that content unless it's something that's really of interest to their friends or their colleagues on social media. Whereas if you pose a question or ask for input or have a really engaging picture that goes with your post rather than just text, it's much more likely to be shared. And just remembering that your ideal listener, your ideal community members are already there. So let them lead you to your next ideal listeners. We always talk about a 1 in 5 marketing to value ratio. So for every one piece of marketing that you put out through social media, put out 5 pieces of content that add value, that are interesting, that do something to enhance your community's life in some way. Once you get that ratio right, you'll find that your communities start thriving a lot more. So some of the types of some of the types of content can be around community engagement, questions, inspiration. If you have a look at shows like the Today Show and Sunrise, the morning breakfast shows, they do quite a good job of asking questions that drive engagement. But it might be, if you could host your own radio show, what would the topic be? You know, make it relevant to what it is that your station stands for, but actually asking questions really is a great way to engage your community. Inspirational quotes. Lots of people roll their eyes when I talk about inspirational quotes, but they are the most shared content on social media. So create a square template in something like PowerPoint, or if you've got a graphic design package, but it doesn't need to be complicated. We basically have a PowerPoint template that's 10 centimetres by 10 centimetres. Whenever we do an inspirational quote for clients, we put in a captivating image. We superimpose the quote with attribution to who said the quote on top of the image, and we put the company or the brand logo into the picture as well. And then you write a comment that goes with that. But those pieces of content get shared widely, which carries your brand with them. Use social media as an education tool so you can show people how your station works. You can answer questions that they might have. You can share the story. You can share the behind the scenes, but you could really use the opportunity to educate people in how you want to engage with them online. News is always very well shared in terms of content, so timely, relevant news. Promotions work really well. You're well placed as radio stations to run competitions and special offers. You can collaborate with local businesses around that. Successful competitions are fabulous in driving engagement and community growth. And then with your marketing, you want to take a soft approach to your marketing and really use the opportunity to tell the story of your station, your volunteers and your donors. And if you manage to get that nice, well-rounded picture, then the direct marketing messages will be seen by a lot more people, particularly on Facebook. So people will add you to their lists. They'll add you to their circles. They'll turn on notifications for your page so that you do show up in their social media if you're providing timely, relevant, interesting, engaging content. We'll talk a lot more about content in Facebook next time because content is key for Facebook in particular. And we'll talk about the anatomy of a post and how you really make that work. As a general rule, you want to respond to criticism and negative feedback publicly and not act defensively. The batting back and forth, the tennis match, never works on social media. If someone's really irate and you've actually done something that's not right, then, you know, it's always good to be authentic and transparent. It's okay to take people offline rather than having it play out online. But you then want to go back and feed back to your community. So go back to the Facebook post or the wherever that engagement has happened, and go back and say, was really good to speak with you today, glad we resolved your issue, so that anyone else that comes and sees that engagement sees that it's been resolved rather than just pushed under the carpet. So when it comes to things going pear-shaped on social media, there are certainly a whole lot of strategies to deal with that. But generally, treat people as human beings. But remember that the engagement is happening publicly. So I'll leave it at that at the moment because I'm really aware that we're very close on 7 o'clock. So I'm not sure, Nicola, if we've got any time for questions. But as I said, I'm very happy if you want to send me a digest of all the questions that have come through. I'm happy to write a blog that responds to some of those. And if they are about Facebook, please do tune in to the next webinar on the 17th of July because we'll go into that in a whole lot more detail.
Thanks, Kate. I mean, look, I think actually people are complaining about how loud I am. Sorry. It's just, I can't help it, you know. I've actually got a band rehearsing in the floor below and it's so loud I feel like I have to scream over them. Most of the questions that people have asked, there have been a lot of very kind of questions around the functions of Facebook, and I think that all of them we can look at and really address in the next webinar. Stephen has already said that. But there were a couple of questions really early on that I thought maybe you could just answer here, which were generally about how do, and it was Trish that was asking them around what is considered a, you know, kind of minimum number of likes to be relevant for sponsorship in particular, like looking at how much do sponsors and grant givers actually look at an organisation's social media before they decide or to either continue or to support an organisation, in this case a station. Do you have anything on that? Maybe that's the one and only question that's not specifically about Facebook.
Sure. I think it depends on the sponsor and it depends on the relationship. at the end of the day, you don't want to be building these communities for any other purpose than genuinely building community with your listeners. So you want to have that be the core of what you're doing rather than as a sponsorship carrot, if you like. But if you're wanting to have those conversations with sponsors, I mean, we've done some work with a large wedding magazine where we've gotten their social media is so successful now that as part of their advertising package that they give to their advertisers, there's a page on social media and it shares some of the key metrics about reach and about engagement, and actually puts a dollar value on each post that happens about an advertiser, and that's gone down really well. But we spent a good 12 months building their community to having really high engagement, and then it speaks for itself. Sponsors who are highly active in social media absolutely value other active. So if they're looking to sponsor your station, I wouldn't say that it would stop them sponsoring you if you're not doing it, but it could also be part of the sponsorship that you ask for some support in growing your own social media. I know we've certainly used that as a strategy in the not-for-profit sector, of not-for-profits asking their key donors and supporters who are really strong in social media to support them in growing their communities. So I think it depends on the sponsor, and I'd focus more on, get the communities as engaged as possible so that it does add value to your sponsors, because if you say that social media is relevant to them but you've only got 100 likes and no one ever engages, then it probably isn't a lot of value to them.
Okay, Kate, just maybe perhaps one more question that isn't about Facebook, and it comes from...
I'll just jump in there first. Sorry about that. Can I jump in there, Nicola and Kate?
Sure.
In relation to using social media to equip grants, etc., that was earlier on. It was asked as part of it. It's related to this question. I have had examples where creating a blog has been enough to show that you have engaged with the community and the money has been spent in the way that you intended. And that was a Vic state government grant for developing studios for a station in Melbourne. And they actually preferred to have a blog they could share amongst the rest of the department and interested parties than a written report. So I suppose the key is to actually look at your grant reporting guidelines and see indeed if you can actually use a social media presence to substantiate that the money they've given you has gone to benefit the community in the intended fashion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. And just if we can fit just one more quick question that wasn't a Facebook question that came up, and it came from Janine Collins, who works for the Aboriginal and Islander Communications Association down in Canberra. She asks, are there any tips on how to get members of your organisation to engage on social media? At the moment, they use emails to get info to members, and it would be better for them, better for ACRE, if they could just put this stuff up and share news and events via social media. I'm presuming they're not getting their membership engaged.
Yeah, look,
Kate, do you have any advice there?
Absolutely. This is where integration is really important, and I would venture to guess that some of you have got listener bases, and I think I saw a message fly through the chat that says something about the age demographic that are your listeners. And the reality is not everybody, heaven forbid, is actually on social media. As much as I think everyone wakes up and the first thing they do is check Facebook and look at Twitter, there are plenty of people that are not on social media. And this is about meeting people where they're at. And it's about giving people options. So my suggestion in that situation would be that you say, we're really wanting to create a thriving, engaged community on social media. We'd really encourage you to join us there. There's much more frequent and interesting, not interesting, but there's much more frequent information that happens on social media. So we encourage you to like our page, follow us on Twitter, and then you get them on both platforms. But I wouldn't be phasing out. Email marketing plays a really important role as well. So I wouldn't be phasing out email, but look at how you can repurpose your content on email to be on social media, and encourage people. Just say, if you'd rather engage with us on social media than on email, feel free to unsubscribe. The only caution that I would issue with that is that it is impossible, and again, I'll go into this in more detail with Facebook, but Facebook in particular, sorry, I just read something in the chat channel and lost my train of thought. Facebook in particular, on average, 17% of people see your content at any one time. So putting out a key message on email to 1,000 people, you'll get your normal click-through rate of people that open that, whereas you might only get 17% of people who see that message on Facebook. So, and it can be even less on Twitter if people don't have monitoring systems set up so that they see what's relevant to them. So it's not instead of, it's an addition to. And some people will only want to receive your emails. They won't want to engage with you on social media. Are you there, Nicola?
Okay, I've got the mic.
Yes, I am. I was just being silent, waiting for Stephen to take his cue.
I was trying to speak. I think we need to wrap it up there, but there's still some questions coming through. I just want to quickly address one that I've seen from Dylan, which says, can Kate quickly touch on Google Hangout and if it should be used? I think what Kate would reply to that is that you should be where your audience are. And if your audience are using that, then it is something you should explore. But if they're already existing on another social platform, then that's where you should put your energies. And part of any good social media strategy is to identify where you wish to put your energies. So if you go to cbaonline.org.au/resources, you'll find some information on creating that type of strategy. If anyone, I suggest everyone dig around there. Any specific questions they come up with about formulating a strategy or tips on how to get it, you can shoot me an email. I'll put my email in the chat room now, and it's also on the website. But I think we are basically going to wrap it up there. I'd like to encourage everyone to register for the next webinar, which is July 17th, and it's specifically focused on Facebook. We've got some great questions that have come through today, which we will directly address. And in the meantime, you can send any other questions that you'd like to add to that to my email address as well. So does everyone remember where that put the hand symbol is on the control panel? I hope so, and I'd like everyone to click it to put their hand up as a way of clapping to say thank you to Kate for her presentation. And
it's deafening.
Is it deafening? Yeah.
It's deafening. Thank you, everyone. It's been great being with you this evening.
Now, we will put this up online as well. We'll send you a link so you can watch it again, and we look forward to you joining us on the 17th. If you check your email accounts now, you'll also see that we've sent out a really brief survey that we'd love you to complete. This is the first one we've tried, so we want to know how we can make it better for you and what you think we should be doing. So there's a brief 6-question SurveyMonkey survey to complete, and we'd really appreciate you completing that so we can so we can make this work a bit better for you all. I'm going to say good night.
Good night from me too. It's Nicola shouting. And we'll see you next month. Thanks, Kate. It was fantastic.